Okay, we're recording. So, all right, anything that you wanted to throw in before we jump into it? And we're not live, so this first part will be edited out. But is there anything that you want to go into before you kind
No.
of? Okay. All right. Well, awesome. All right. Well, we are back. I mean, it's been some time since we've done a podcast because a lot has happened in the world, in our world as loan officers and running, a group in the mortgage space. A lot of growth has happened. So I'm excited today because it's been a while since I've gotten back into doing podcasts, and it's something that I really love to do. But one of the things I love doing even more is introducing you guys to some of the coolest loan officers that are in the marketplace. And hopefully, through their stories, you get an opportunity as a listener to be inspired, and hear some good tricks of the trade, of what they're doing. But before I jump into our next guest, I wanted to share with you guys something that is near and dear to my heart, and that's the fact that we have the coolest event happening in Phoenix on February 18th in 2022. So if you happen to hear this after that date, you've passed it. But February 18th, 2022 in Phoenix is the breakthrough event. And we are going to have some of the best speakers there. And if you are someone who is looking to break through in 2022, this is the event to attend. And if we post any of the clips, we will also have a link to that event in the comments. So look in the comments when you see this, and you should see a link to that event. This first event is in Phoenix, and there will be more events to come throughout the country. So be on the lookout for that. But I am excited because I have someone who I have had a chance to get to know over the last several years with me today. And his name is Rudy Lopez. Rudy, say hello to everybody.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for having me, Chris. It's been a long time waiting, so I'm so glad that we're finally doing this.
No, man, I totally agree. And I feel bad that we've rescheduled this because everything just got really crazy in our worlds. But I am so glad that we finally get to do this. So, for those of you that don't know my man, Rudy, you got to get to know this guy. So, look for him. Rudy, how do they find you on Instagram?
So I'm on Rudy Home Loans on Instagram, and then also on Facebook, and I also have a YouTube channel under my name, Rudy Lopez. So any one of those would be the good ones to get a hold of me.
Okay, awesome. So let me give a little bit of background on Rudy. Rudy is obviously, if you're watching, he is a Latino loan officer. And I say that because in our industry, we do a lot of loans for in the diverse communities, but in our industry, we don't have that many loan officers who are doing some of the things that Rudy's doing that are in the Latino space. And so I think it's important to note that Rudy has done something that a lot of people haven't. He has broken through and done an amazing job with getting into spaces that traditionally Latinos don't get into in our mortgage space, right? And if you're one of the Latinos that's been in there, congratulations. I'm not talking about you. I am talking about this is a minority in our industry. And Rudy has figured out a way not only to specialize in jumbo, but to also specialize in new construction loans. And I guess if you're in one of those, you're also specializing in helping people get in a better financial position through debt consolidation, through taking short-term debt and looking at ways to make that long-term debt to put them in a better financial situation, but also helping so many families get into a home for the first time. So Rudy's done an amazing job with that. But here's what really drew me to Rudy, right? So Rudy's from Texas. I'm from Texas. We both had an account that was very similar in our worlds. It was the exact same account, but he had it in Houston, I had it in Phoenix, and it was ripped away from us because it went to a different group. And so it was like we were kind of talking and realized that we had all these similarities in the mortgage industry. And then of course, moved from Texas to I'm now in Arizona, and he moved to Arizona. And when you're in the mortgage space and you're building your brand in the local communities, one of the hardest things to do is take your brand and then move it and put it into another market. That's probably one of the hardest things to do. And Rudy did it. He did an amazing job with that. And I will say he's now one of the countries, because there's very few people doing this. And Rudy has just done an amazing job with breaking through on building a digital brand. He is doing amazing work educating people on Instagram. He is doing an amazing job using that content throughout all of his social media. But he's also created a YouTube channel to help the consumer understand not only the marketplaces that he's in, but to educate on the buying process, because that's probably the hardest part about home ownership, is going through the process. And Rudy's there to help you through it. And so, Rudy, thank you so much, man. I'm so happy that you finally got a chance to join us today, man. How are you doing today?
I'm great, man, and thank you for all of that. I take the approach in my mortgage practice to where I operate out of the foundation that there's a difference between just owning a home and being a successful homeowner.
Hmm.
And just owning a home is thinking, okay, I can afford the payment, I
Hmm.
can I have the money down to buy this house. Yes, I can pay for this house, but being a successful homeowner is understanding, why am I using this mortgage? Why am I using this loan product? Why am I putting this
Hmm.
much down and not that much down in order to get to my goals? Why am I using this strategy versus that strategy? And I really take pride in that. And the reason I do that is because from talking to clients and just getting to know more people, getting to know my network, a lot of people, as smart and successful as they are, mortgages can be a little bit of a daunting task, and they can be
Hmm.
a lot more complex than sometimes we make them out to be. and
Hmm.
and I just take great pride in helping people financially, and not just sticking them in a mortgage, giving them a pat on the back at closing, and wishing them good luck. So I really take pride in helping people make smarter mortgage and financial decisions.
That's an amazing thing, right? So I talk about this, and if anybody's listened to some of my stuff, you know that this is a big hot point for me. But I want my mother or my grandmother, or my dad, or somebody that's in my family who doesn't speak very good English, to walk into, and by the way, my parents speak fine English, but I'm just saying, somebody that's near and dear to me, and really the community out there who is looking to purchase a home, who has done really well for themselves and just wants to work with somebody like-minded and that looks like them. And that's a thing, right? I mean, people want to do business with people that are similar. And they do that, and they finally find somebody, however they find them. Maybe they're listening to a radio station and they hear an ad, or they hear something, right? And they stumble across somebody and they think that they can trust them, and they call them and they gouge them because they don't know any better in terms
Mhm,
of financial literacy.
mhm,
And that bothers me. And it bothers me a lot. And it's prevalent in our industry, where you see these really, really high cost mortgage lenders that speak Spanish because they have that gift of the language, who are gouging customers mainly because they want to get paid more. And so, that never sits well with me. And when I finally meet somebody, and there's a vet out process that I do when I meet somebody that can serve this community, that I want to make sure that they're really doing it for the right purposes. And one of the things that just resonated with me with you was the fact that this was kind of your mission as well, was to make sure that you're helping people. And then you built content around it in terms of helping people understand that financial literacy and how important it is. And I just think we need more Rudies out there in the world. But Rudy, let's start from the beginning, because I think what will inspire people is to understand the road that you've been on to get to where you are today. Right today, you're a very successful loan officer. You would probably say there's a million other things that you want to get done in this business, and that you're still getting through that, but you've broken through in a way that a lot of people haven't or weren't able to. So take me back to, you're working in, you got in from the auto industry, right? What were you doing in the auto industry? Let's start there.
Yeah, so actually, before the auto industry, I was a commercial lender, and
Oh, okay.
working with companies and handling their commercial real estate and financing. And then that eventually, I did that for about 10 years. And that
Hmm.
eventually got just a little too boring for me, because in commercial lending, you would do 3, 4 deals a year. And then you would have a great year and just kind of move on to the next one. The sales cycle was super long. I mean, I would talk to prospects for years before I could finally maybe get an opportunity to earn their business. And so that got very old.
Well, I don't know if that, I mean, is boring the right word for it? Because to me, if I only got 3 deals a year, if one of those falls out, that's now a third of your income that's just out the door, right?
Yeah.
And so it's excruciating to not have momentum. You know what I mean? In that sales cycle. So was there a lot of sweating that out when you were doing it, worrying
There
about,
was.
if it's going to happen or not?
Yeah, there was a lot of sweating it out. And for me personally, there was a lot of self-reflection. Am I really cut out for this? Am I really going to spend the rest of my life sitting in front of a computer and a desk and just cranking out 3 or 4 deals a year? Like, is that really what I was made to do? And the answer ultimately was no. And I had a really long talk with my wife, and I just said to her, I can't keep doing this anymore. I have to find more of a sense of purpose in my life, and I want to make more money. I want to just be able to have more ability to earn more and to make more of an impact on people's lives. And I had friends that were in the car business, and I went in. Went to my friend. I'm actually helping him with his mortgage now, as a matter of fact.
Oh, that's awesome.
He helped me get into the finance side of the business. I have never sold a car before in my life. I didn't even know how to sell a car. And so when I got into the car business, I literally had jumped a couple of steps in order to get to finance, because typically the stepping stone is you sell a car, you do well, then you go into finance and you wait a long time to get into finance. Well, I kind of skipped all that and I went straight to finance. And it was my first day in the auto industry, my first day on the job. It was almost like, it sounds weird, but it was almost like your first day in prison, because I had all these sales reps that hated my guts. Like, I'm walking in and like they're all just talking trash to me.
Well, wait, hold on. So why do you think? I mean, well, first off, did you skip all the steps, rightfully so, because you had lending ability at the last place, and so you came in with a skill set that was transferable to this, right? And in fact, in many ways, it could have been more, more above the criteria that you would need to know to fit somebody into a credit box of finding an auto, right? So you're coming in, but you probably look young. You're a young dude, right? And everybody's hating on you like day one.
Oh man.
What did that feel like? Like, what would I need examples of this? What was this like?
Well, I mean, when you walk into a car dealership, you got at this particular dealership, there were the guys that were like lined up, the next person that walks in the dealership, first guy in line gets them, and then just kind of rotation. And so I walk in, I'm not really even sure where I'm supposed to go. And so that's the first place that I go to. And they're all just talking shit, man. They're calling me all kinds of names and like
legit calling you names.
There's no HR, man.
Yeah.
There's no 1-800 number I can call and go, yo, this guy called me a bitch. Like, there's none of that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it was pretty much at the end of the day, it was like, who are you? Like, you coming in here to our world and you're all of a sudden going to be a finance F&I guy? Who the fuck are you? And so it was a lot of that. And right out of the gates, man, that was the first time since I played baseball where it was like, okay, this is like legit competition. Like I'm fighting for my job. If I'm not going to perform, the guy behind me is going to take my spot. That was kind of the mentality that I came in with. And it's crazy, but the first couple of weeks, I'm shadowing everybody. I'm asking a million questions. I'm getting on people's nerves because I'm asking so many questions. The very first full month that I'm a finance guy, I'm number one in the whole place. Number one. And that's when the real hate started. I'm talking, I thought I saw hate. That's when the real hate started. But that's when the fire inside of me came out, man. That's when those 10 years of just grinding it out as a commercial lender, kind of feeling like I had not really living up to my potential. That's when all that came out. And I was like, man, this is what I'm made to do. Not necessarily like be in the car business per se, but I'm supposed to be in sales. I'm supposed to help people. I'm supposed to work with people. I'm supposed to make an impact on people. And that's where really like the passion started.
So you're going through this process and you got these haters. You're now number one. Was there a point in time where you earned like the respect of the people, or was there always this like overarching, haters that were gonna always be there?
Yeah, there was always going to be a hater no matter what industry you're in, right? So there were
Yeah.
some certain people that just could not swallow that tough pill that I was kicking their ass. And then, but then there were also people that, yeah, man, after a while, just like in anything, if you're out, if you're starting to help other people too, then they, you know, they start gravitating towards you as well. So I just took the approach of take the high road, talk shit when I had to, keep my mouth shut when I had to, and just be as helpful to everybody as possible. And eventually, you know, a lot of people turned around and, you know, we all became buddies, but there was still always some hate from somewhere along the way.
Man, I never want to be. I mean, you know, how would I put it? Like, I'll give you a quick example. Like, I work out. I used to work out at the be pre-COVID. I would work out at a CrossFit,
Mhm.
and the 6 o'clock group. It was that was a group that I was in. It was just known that there was a different vibe in that group because everyone's just talking shit, you
Yeah.
know? Like, I mean, you get your shoes made fun of, like, where did you get those? Like, at Walmart, you know? Like, it was just one of those, like it was one of those environments, right? And it was weird. So anyway, I was telling somebody about the story the other day, and so I feel like I'm repeating, but I don't think anybody's here heard this story. So I love this group, right? Because I was in the I can barely lift anything, right? But I'm in the middle talking crap about everything, right? And it's
Yeah.
just so fun, right? So anyway, I got something. I ended up changing to a different location, a different CrossFit, or doing like a free membership because one of my buddies with that one kept talking me into going. So they were doing like a month free. So I went over to this other one, and it was the weirdest thing because everybody was nice. Like everybody was like unusually nice. Like, hey, buddy, like, you know, like my name's so and so, my name's so and so, and like, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to CrossFit, but it's kind of a thing that everybody is. You have. That this was another thing that you and I, you know,
Yeah.
we were like we're both from Texas, both CrossFit.
Yeah.
Um, so you know the so we're you know we're in this CrossFit situation and everybody's unusually nice and I never went back. I went one time and I was like, that place is weird. Like I don't I I actually thrived in an environment where people were talking shit, right? And it's the weirdest thing. And not that I don't think that that's what our culture is like by any means, but it for me, it was almost like a rite of passage to earn the compliment. You know, you had to be there for a little bit for people to, you know, then come and like introduce, which is totally an exclusive environment, which I don't agree with. But do you feel like this helped you? And so like, you know, one of the themes of this episode is really about breaking through, right? And so a lot of times we're faced with some sort of adversity in our careers where we got to figure out a way or a hack to break through something, whether it's you're trying to break through a level of production that you haven't hit, you're trying to break through to another job, or you're trying to break through and be liked by and respected by the people that you're working with in this. So how did you do that? Like what was one of the things that you ended up doing to get to that point?
You know, growing up and throughout my years of playing baseball, I was always kind of a chip on my shoulder kind of guy. Like I always wanted to prove people wrong, and not that there was anybody trying that I needed to prove wrong, but that was just kind of how I just was my mentality was, and I think it was just from hearing pro athletes and how these guys were great and they all had a chip on their shoulder kind of mentality. So I just in my head I was like, I think that's how I need to be. So that's how I was. That was what would keep me motivated throughout. And then as I got older, more mature, I guess I would say, and then I started putting more things into perspective. I want to prove people right. I want to
Yes.
prove my family right. That
Yep.
man, their son, he's a badass.
Yeah.
I want my dad and my mom and my wife and my kids and anyone who has ever trusted me or believed in me. I want to prove them right. And that's what I live off of now. Not so much of this, you know, show everybody that I can do it, and then even if they don't think I can do it. And so that's where I am mentally now, and that's what keeps me going because there's been so many people, you and I, we all of us we've had someone in our lives that have helped us, that have
Mhm.
believed in us, that have given us have given us a hand, have put us in a situation that we wouldn't have been in without that person. And it's those people now that I look back on and I'm like, I want to help. I want those people to see what their help has done for me, and I want to prove them right. So that's where I come off of now.
Man, that's powerful because I do believe that a lot of us go through life with a bit of a chip on our shoulder to prove people wrong that may have had a bad, I guess what I would perceive to be they didn't believe in me or they didn't believe in you, right? And so it's to prove them wrong. But that's such a terrible and poisonous mindset to have because when you really think about it, on the flip side of that are all the people that are believing in you
Mhm,
and are rooting for you,
mhm.
and our mind tends to float to the other group
Yes.
when we should be thinking about the more important group and those that believe in us and proving them right. Because in trying to prove somebody wrong, you may end up disappointing the people who you're trying to prove right. And I've done that, right? I've made decisions in life that I wasn't proud of primarily to prove something
Yeah.
to somebody that, and maybe like going at it the wrong way because I felt like I had to prove myself. And so that's a powerful comment. And I love that. I love that you shared that. You know, when you think about going through, kind of that faced adversity, you get through it. And then how long were you in the auto industry?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. So that was
One.
probably because, it's funny because in talking to you, it seemed like longer because it had a definite impact on who you are. Um, got your teams going on, but definitely impacted you. How did you end up like what was the defining moment that you said, okay, it's now time to look at lending as home lending as an opportunity. What got you there?
So I loved the auto industry. It was like going back to playing ball with the guys in the locker room, having fun. But now you're making money. Like, oh, this is
Yeah.
awesome. This is the best job in the world. And but the hours, man, I was working 70, 80 hours a week. Month end, I was coming home super late at night. I barely saw my wife. We didn't have kids at the time, so I don't want to make excuses, but we can manage because of
Hmm.
that. We didn't have kids, so after a year, my wife's like, "What's next? Are you just gonna move up and work more?" And that
Hmm.
was a real eye opener and a kind of a punch in the gut because I was having such a great time. Um, and so that was my aha moment that I needed to that 1 year. There's chapters in our lives, right? And so every chapter of our lives is a next step to the next chapter. That was the one chapter in my life that helped fuel the fire inside of me again. That the last 10 years of chapters kind of smothered. And so that was the 1 year where I found myself again. I had that drive again. I had that competition spirit again. I had that swag back, and so I got into lending because um, I wanted a job that kind of had a little bit of the same sort of feel where I could
Hmm.
go out and make as much as I wanted or as little as I wanted, and I could make my own schedule. However, I could make my own schedule. I could have a little more
Hmm.
of a balanced life. And so I called the guy that helped us with our mortgage, and I just asked him, can I make, decent money as a mortgage lender? And we kind of went over that and discussed that. And then, he's like, yeah, you can come work with me. And so that was the reason why I got into mortgage lending, not because I had some lifelong dream of being a mortgage lender,
No one does.
but no one does, but because I wanted some sort of similarity between the job that I'd had prior to that, and I wanted to keep that fire burning inside, and it was the perfect decision for me.
So it's funny. I'll throw in a quick story, and I don't know how to tell it, but so I was working in mortgage, but I was working for a bank, and I was on the operations side. I was managing the all of the underwriting and closing for a territory of Wells Fargo, and it was just massive like amount of work, right? It was just crazy, but I my boss and I became pretty good friends, and we would go have drink. This is, we had, I had one older daughter, and I say older, she wasn't like a baby. Um, and, so everybody was kind of self-sufficient in the household. We didn't have the little ones at the time. And so I would get home, like 9, because everybody was hustling, but then I'd go have drinks afterwards. And, come home, my wife knew I had a few drinks, and it was like, I'll never forget the time that she finally was like kind of similar to you, except you were doing something a little bit more honorable. You were actually working. I was like, coming home like, oh, I was with the boss, and we're having some drinks. And she was like, how long is this going to go on? Like, I mean, this can't go on forever, like 3 nights a week, you're out having a great time, like we're here, just at the house. And so finally it was funny then, just like that, it was that one thing that just changed. And I never did again. Like, it was just like, but that changed my thought process. And, like for me, we're very fortunate, people in our industry, because one, you have the flexibility of schedule, but you also, it used to be the sense for me, like it was also my social life was kind of also tied into the people that I work with, because that's all you really know, right? So you find friends at work and then you hang out with them, right? And so, but eventually, so the happy hours just ended up stopping, right? You just kind of outgrew them. And so, then you kind of go into this, for me, it was at least this light bulb of, like, how much can I get done in a specific period of time to then go out and be home with the family, right? And that's an evolution of who we are as people. But I noticed that about you. And so the reason I bring this up in a long-winded, sort of way, is because that's the beauty of our position, is the fact that you can go out and make a ton of money. You can put barriers in place of when you want to take your calls, um, and for a guy like you that's coming from the auto industry, which, by the way, I think some of the best loan officers come from the auto industry, because they find out that they can make triple the money, quadruple the money, work half the hours, and get their weekends back. And so when they got to take 2 calls from realtors on the weekend, they're like, I'll do that all day.
All day.
Right. But then you got other people who have never taken calls on the weekends and are, bothered by, getting a phone call from a realtor on the weekend, or a customer. So, I feel like there's an evolution of, the fact that you went from this ball and chain of a job to then go into lending. And so how did you end up quitting? Like, what was the culmination of you, like, actually going from, deciding like, hey, this is a good moment for me to look at and explore this other thing? Was there any defining moment that happened that you were like, I'm just quitting today? Or did you go get licensed? How did that all work? Because for our industry, you have to be licensed. You can't just quit and then, not get a paycheck and then go get licensed. Were you nervous about that? How did that all work out?
I actually just quit. The good news is that my wife and I we're frugal, and I practice what I preach, right? When I'm talking financial literacy and just making sure that everyone's good to go. So I just quit, and I spent about 6 months trying to find out what Rudy Lopez should be doing with his life. And it was also, not only was it a good feeling that I wasn't in that environment anymore, working like that anymore. My wife, figuring out what time I was coming home that night. It was also a very low point in my life, because I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to be in the car business anymore, but I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing.
Was your
And
wife cool? Was she like, Rudy's out finding himself and we have no income coming in?
yeah, she was actually, I mean, hats off. She was, because she knows, I've mentioned to you before, I'm a huge product of my environment. If I'm in an office, if I'm not happy, if I'm in an office where I'm just sitting in front of a computer and not really, engaging, it seeps into my personal, life. And so
Gotcha.
she was like, dude, go find yourself. And it was about 6 months. And I also had my real estate license at the time. So I actually was closing some deals as a realtor
Oh,
during
wow.
that
Okay.
time.
Okay.
And so I used that as a way of, kind of continuing the sales process, the commission based approach. And then 6 months later is when I decided to call our mortgage lender. And that's when I was going to go work for his company. I went and got licensed. The district manager at the time said, go get your license. We'll hire you. in Dallas because we were going to move to Dallas. He said, "We'll hire you. All good. No problem. You've got support from this other guy that I should hire you. So I'm going to do it." Well, I call him the day I get licensed. He doesn't answer. And then I sent him a text message and told him that I passed my test. I never heard from the guy ever again. And so that was my first experience being a lender. I was supposed to go work for a particular company, and the guy never called me back.
Well, so I got to tell you, so this is funny. So I get asked about this all the time, right? Like people like from my, from back home, like in Texas that I grew up with, they'll see my social media and it looks like what we're doing is really fun. So they'll like, "Hey, Chris, how do I get into what you're doing?" And I'm like, gotta get licensed. You gotta, you gotta do all that. Right. And then nobody ever calls me back. Right. Like very few people call me back. So then like, but it took me a while. Like I would lead with all the things that you got to do, like hopefully scare them away from that. You actually have to sell and make no money.
Yeah.
And then they would be like, "No, I can do that. That's cool." And then I get to the part towards the end of the conversation about the license. And then, then they never call me again. So then I started changing it and saying, we just got to get licensed first. Right. And then no one ever calls me back, but there's been a few people that have, and it's so funny, but so I got a call from a guy that works in your office. I won't say his name, but if he hears this, he'll laugh. But he was like, "Hey man, I'm looking, to get into the business." I was like, "We gotta get licensed." And like literally in 2 weeks, he called me back and with his license. And I was like, he got licensed. I could not believe it. And so in doing right and the honorable thing, we hired him like that. Like we found a spot and we hired him. And by the way, it's been the best decision we've made because, he just is he does amazing things. But so I'm going to come back to another story you told me before we jump back in, but you told me one time, because when you and I first met, it's a funny way that we met, but like I was in a conference. It was our last manager meeting. Like we all come together like once, twice a year, the leaders of the company. And we talk about, what's happening for that period of time to the next meeting, and so we, everybody, we was right pre-COVID. It was like the last one before COVID. We haven't had one since. And so we all get together and there's these like areas where people go have a drink or, go have dinner or whatever at the end of the night. And so everybody kept giving me your name. Like, you got to talk to this guy. He's moving from Houston to Arizona, give him a call. And then I talked to somebody else and like, got to talk to this guy. And I was like, why is everybody giving me this guy's number? Right. So of course, first thing I do is I call you. And call you, and you're almost in this weird, like, you'll answer the phone. You're nice because you're a nice guy, but you were very standoffish. Like, and I remember where I was standing, where we finally we finally talked, and we ended up talking for like 30 minutes. And you told me a lot of the story that, your background. But one of the things you said later on, because what would happen is we would talk, and then you would disappear. And then, you'd ask me a question or I'd call you back and then we re-engage. But then one of those times you said, "You know what, man, here's why I've kind of been like, I've kind of been like, I keep getting, like mortgage lenders, just, they tell you what you want to hear. And, I've been burned before. And this is a really good example of that happening. Somebody in the mortgage space said, go get licensed. You go get licensed and they don't hire you. So tell me about other times you've been burned like this. And mainly because I want people to hear the impact that it has when you do that. Like if you interview somebody and you make a promise to them, even if the world changes and you decide, hey, we don't have the time to help you right now, it's worth the phone call, because ghosting somebody is just not okay. It's just uncool. And it's a hard time. Like I have a hard time with it. Like one time I interviewed like 30 people for a job and I selected one. So I was like, I got to make 29 calls and like I picked somebody else and here's why, and give you the honor of knowing why, because I felt like it was the right thing to do. So tell me about that. Like how many times, how has it been working and being recruited by mortgage people? And why is there such a distrust in it?
I don't know. I don't know because, my mind to a fault, I tend to like trust a little bit too much. And I tend,
Okay.
because I'm transparent as best as I can and to just be as genuine as I can. And I feel like I am. And then when I don't get that in return, that's when the wall comes up, right? The
Yeah.
barrier. And perfect example was the day I get licensed, I got burnt.
Yes.
And so that's what a way to start the whole ego, and not the ego, but the whole confidence, in
Yes.
my new career. And so I don't know what the deal is, but I know that when it comes to sales, I have a feeling that no matter what industry you're in, you're gonna work, you're gonna encounter people that just might not have your best interests at heart, and that's exactly why the sales profession has such a bad name to it, or a bad stigma behind it, and it's my job, it's my responsibility to break
Mhm.
that barrier and break through to people and help them as best as I can financially, so that they're never put in a situation where they look back at me and think that I was the guy that screwed them over. I want to be the guy that they look at as the person that put them in the best financial situation for their families. So that's my motivation, and I wish I could go inside people's heads and understand why they're not looking out for the best interest in people all the time. But I'm just like you. If I have to make 29 phone calls and tell someone that I went a different direction, I will make 29 phone calls.
Yeah.
That's just the right thing to do.
It is. It is. I totally agree with you. So when has it been? Tell me, the time when you've done so many things to break through in so many different areas, right? But tell me about the time that was most impactful for you in terms of you you got the most satisfaction of getting to that next level. And what was that? What was that time that you went through?
I think it was the first year into the business, and we were living with my in-laws because we didn't know where we were going to live. I had just gone 6 months of no employment into a 100% commission job. How the heck am I going to buy a house? I'm not. So I was still very much learning what I was going to do with my life, and I love cold calling. And so I started doing what I do, and I started
Do you
cold
really
calling.
love cold calling?
I love it. I love it. I love
Do
it
you
so much.
really?
I do. I
So
really do.
funny.
It's funny because whenever I get cold called, I'll go home and I'll tell my wife, like, I'll replay the conversation, and she's like, it's funny because we now have like this understanding of like how to pick apart when someone cold call, if it's a good call or a bad call.
Yeah.
But anyway, and it was about 7, 8 months into me being in the industry, and there was a builder who I just kept seeing their billboard because I would pass. It was an hour each way to my in-laws' house.
Mhm.
They were an hour and a half north of Dallas. So I was just hour and a half each way every day, 2, 3 hours on the road. And I kept seeing this billboard, and finally one day I'm exhausted. I don't want to do anything because it's late in the afternoon. And so I pull over and I drive into the community, and I walk in and I cold call. I try to talk to somebody, and I get the person's business card because the decision maker wasn't there. And I call that person the very next day. Lo and behold, this builder is looking for another lender, just out of the blue. And so about 5, 6 months pass, and and he tells me, "Hey, look, we're looking for a lender. You need to call this guy." And so I call the guy, talk to him, tells me what they're looking for, ghosts me for about 5 or 6 months, and then finally, after almost a year, we became the preferred lender for this particular builder from a billboard that I decided one day that I wasn't going to pass by anymore without going into this community and at least giving it a try. And it was life changing. Like, my production went from zero to 40, 50 million a year. And it was just the most, I cried that day when they told us that they'd interviewed, after interviewing multiple lenders. I remember being in the car and hearing that we were the lender, and I was driving home, and I remember telling my wife, "Hey, we got the builder." And I remember walking in, and my in-laws were sitting there, and they all just looked at me because they knew the news, and I just started bawling and started crying because of that life-changing experience that I was not
Wow.
expecting to happen.
Wow, dude. I mean, that is so powerful because your entire family was rallying around, their daughter's
Yeah,
decision for
yeah,
you,
yes,
right? Number one. And I hope you were washing dishes whenever you ate there and stuff, because and
Yeah,
pulling your weight living in their household,
yeah,
because it seemed like they really believed in you.
yeah.
And it's really hard, because I don't care who you are, right? I don't care how much I love my kids. When they're adults and they move back in, there's a bit of an inconvenience for that to happen, right?
Mhm,
And so the fact that you went home, and the love and the trust and the, how would I put it, the authenticity that you have with them to share that, and then on top of that, because we don't like to show emotion,
mhm,
to get emotional about it is really big, man. And that to me is like the defining moment of breaking through. And so I'm going to take you through it, right? Like, you
mhm,
broke through because you decided to do something that 90%, 99% of other lenders wouldn't do.
mhm,
Maybe they got into that builder, or they got a meeting with the builder to be told no because they had a friend of a friend of a friend of
mhm,
a friend that got him in, but you were the only guy that walked in. And now they knew who you were because they remembered that face. And
mhm.
that's, to me, is the difference between, somebody who's going to break through and someone who's not going to break through. And I think you keep, this is like, isn't it funny to think, like, as we talk about it, how far away we get from those basics when we start to
Mhm.
taste success.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's funny because before I was joking that I don't like cold calling, but we were on a meeting before this, but before that, I have 1 hour today that was free, and I cold called, and I didn't get any no's. I think I cold called 8 people, and I got 3 appointments. Um, and I was like, you just got to always make those calls. And so, but I hate it. You know what I mean? I will hate it. So I'm always impressed with you. But so, Rudy, that to me is the epitome of breakthrough, is just walking in and getting the deal. So you get this life-changing moment,
Mhm.
and the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Right?
Oh yeah.
So then the Lord taketh away. How did that feel? What happened then?
Oh man, that was a punch in the gut, to say the least. To be as nice as possible. Recently I was talking to someone about that. I hired a coach to talk me through stuff and help me out. So and I basically said, look, man, I had this big account that went away, and I'm down about it. And he's like, don't view it as a bad thing. Just look at it as you had a couple of amazing years with an opportunity that you maybe would have never had, and just take it for what it's worth. It's a chapter in your life. Let's turn the page. Let's go on and build another chapter better than that one. And so, that
But
was a
it's
real.
so hard not to feel victimized by it, right? I mean, it's so hard not to feel that way. But it goes back to even your comment earlier that you made about, you made the comment about, it was a glass half empty, glass half full comment, right? Like, God, what did you say? You said, it's gonna come to me. And then maybe I edit this part out that I can't remember, but it was the piece about, you don't want to let people down, or you want to prove people right
Yeah.
versus you don't want to let people down, right? So that's the same mentality of, like, it's almost like a breakup. It's like you can mourn the loss,
Uh,
or you can celebrate the fact that you had that love to begin with, and then
mhm.
now you go on to the next chapter. But our brain doesn't work that way. It's a really tough way. So how long did it take for you to mentally, like, dust yourself off from this? And what happened in between that time, from the moment that you lost it to the moment that you started to get up and running again to a new momentum?
Well, I think the good news was that it's almost like, you can taste what success in whatever fashion is in the
Hmm.
feeling. So it's almost like you're chasing that again. So I use that as my motivator, that I need to get back to that level again. And I need to find that life changing moment again. And one thing that I realized too is that it needs to be a constant. It can't just be that one moment. I feel like I need to continue to find that moment that can make me better. Every day when I wake up, I got to find that moment. And
Hmm.
so That's probably the best way that I approached it after the fact is that I can sit there and I can mourn it, and just swallow my pain, or I can actually go out and find another one again. And that's just kind of how I approached it. But it didn't just happen overnight. It's been very hard. And pain is a big motivator in my opinion. Pain is a huge motivator. And as much as I want to prove people right, I also have to dig into that pain every now and then and use that as a motivator, because if I don't do that, then I'll get a little too complacent and I'll get a little too happy, a little too head in the clouds for my own good. And I need to get back down into the dirt and grind it out too. So I kind of use that as motivator.
No, that's good. I love that. I actually think that that's a really big. I'm almost. I don't want to say this and sound like heartless about it, but I'm almost glad that you lost that account for a couple of reasons. Number one, we wouldn't. I don't know that you would be in Arizona right now if you hadn't.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if we would have ever met if you hadn't. But I think when you do it this next time around, and you are and you will,
Mhm.
it's gonna taste even better, right? Because you've had it, you've lost it, and you rebuilt it, and you'll rebuild it stronger because you're smarter about it, right? And sometimes we get lucky in our naivete, like, we don't know what we don't know, so we do things. Like, I'll give you a really good example of this. You said I walked into a builder not knowing, right? Well, a lot of builders, a lot of people who are in the builder business might discourage you from doing that because they're going to say, hey, they have their own lender, and you really need to meet the lender because the salespeople are told to go to the lender, right? But that's not what happened to you. Your naivete said, let me walk into this builder, right? And
Right.
then you got the deal. So it's like, throw out all the advice that people would give you and just hustle, because the more people you talk to, the more opportunity you're going to have. So I watched you evolve just in a short period of time that you've worked here. The Rudy that I first met was trying to figure out how to market, and then there's this Rudy that's like doing this self mastery by getting a coach, which I want to talk about. And then, you're throwing money into advertising. Well, not necessarily advertising. I would take that back. You're throwing money at resources to help you build your digital brand. And it's something that, I don't think a lot of people are doing right now. And so what resonated with you about or what got you over the hump of saying, I'm making X amount of money and I got to now take this portion that, could be as much as paying a car or maybe even a mortgage. And I'm going to put that towards me, towards my brand, towards my name. And I know that it's going to take time for me to see the ROI on that, but what got you over that hump? Because that's tough. And I was joking with you the other day. I had to write a check for something, and I was like, dude, this sucked. So
Yeah.
how do you get over that, and what got you over the hump on that?
Well, I always heard invest in yourself. That pays the biggest dividends. And I totally agree with that. And I never really took that to heart in terms of my career. I just went out and I worked and I excelled and I failed and I try to learn more. But I never really took the self improvement or investing in myself to the next level. And it was actually in right when the pandemic started, right when the lockdown started in early 2020, March of 2020, that I was watching an interview with a bunch of coaches and mortgage professionals. And one guy in particular said, look, the world is about to stop, or the world has already stopped. Are you going to come out of this the same, or are you
Mhm.
going to come out of this way better than you ever thought? Or are you going to look back 12 months from now and wish that you had started today? And that is when it really resonated with me, because this person basically said, this is a once in a lifetime possibly opportunity for all of us to get better while the rest of the world stopped. And that's when I started investing in learning how to use Mortgage Coach. And I use Mortgage Coach now on almost all of my clients. I started researching a lot more self-help on the mortgage space and just performance and mindset. And I really took myself more seriously. I started listening to coaches and to more athletes on just how they excelled at a higher level. And it was so true when I heard someone in particular say, you've got professional athletes that are at a high level. They go out and they practice every single day. And you don't go out and practice every single day. You don't go out and get better every single day. You just show up to the game and just expect to play at a high level. And that was like so true to me, where we get up in the morning and we just go and lace up and we play, but we never spend time in getting better. And that's where it really hit me. It was right when the pandemic started in March, April of 2020.
Man, there are times that as much as I hated what the world went through and is kind of still in a weird way going through, we live in Arizona, so it's like nothing's going on outside, right? But we got great weather, and it's like no one's wearing a mask. But like I will say, like I think to a certain extent, how would I put it? The when the world shifted, there was a little bit of piece of me that missed that moment of, man, we're doing things that no one's doing. Like we used to do this and we would go on lives, and it was this I don't know what you want to call it, but like this almost like going out on stage in front of a million people, and that excitement of doing it, even though it might have just been a few hundred, but at the time it was thousands. Like people were watching because they were all stuck at home and there was nothing to do. And it was like such a fun moment to be in that space. And now you're competing with everybody who's doing it now, right? And the everybody, by the way, is still a very small portion, especially in our space. People are still not doing it. And so the investment that you're making makes sense. I think self-mastery, I think building your brand is highly critical. People need to be able to type in Rudy Lopez and know that they could find you because you have an outlet and an opportunity for them to get to know you through outlets like this. And so what's next for you, man? Like, where do you take, what's your next breakthrough moment? If you had to predict it, or just put the stake in the ground right now and say, I will be doing this, what does that look like for you?
Number one is I need to cultivate and deepen more relationships moving forward. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the people we already know, or even our job, or just getting busy, or just doing what we're doing on a daily basis, that we sometimes don't, or we sometimes lose sight of building more relationships. It could be someone that you never thought could potentially be a good contact to have. And I want to get back to that, because I've always been like that. But then when you just kind of get busy and just kind of get into your own mind, you just stop doing that. So really cultivating, deepening relationships. And then video, just get as much entrenched in video, and to put myself out there as much as possible. My mantra for this year is to fail early, fail often, fail forward. Fail.
Yes.
That's where the
Yes.
magic happens. You don't go to the gym and just crank out 10 reps because that's what you think you should be doing. You go to the gym to crank out to failure, to crank out that extra 1 or 2 rep, because that's where your growth is going to come from. I'm waking up every morning with that mentality that I need
Love
to.
that.
If I'm not failing, then that means that I'm not trying hard enough. If I'm scared to fail, I've already lost in the morning when I wake up. So, just going with the mentality that I need to go out and just execute, and I need to go out and be, willing to fail and find my own voice. You and I talk about finding my voice, whatever that voice might be, and just letting myself just be as authentic and have as much fun as possible, because that's when I'm at my best. And that's what I also think about. Like, when are you at your best, Rudy? It's when I'm playing loose. I'm having fun. I'm talking trash to you. You're talking trash to me. We're motivating each other. We're kicking each other in the butt if the other person's not doing what they're supposed to. We're keeping each other accountable. That's where my mind is this year, and no one's going to stop me.
So this is why we work together. This is why I love the fact that we have come together on this, because 99% of the people that I asked that question to would have given me a number. And you said relationship, and you said growth, and you said failing. And that just goes to the type of individual you are. And it's why when you focus on those things, the money will come.
Yes.
But if it ever switches, remember this time, because if you stick to that, that's what's going to break through. That's where you're going to have your moment. And dude, I got to tell you, man, I'm proud of you. I love what you're doing. I think from, a Latino to a Latino, you're making, the lending space look good because you're doing right by the community. And, I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are reaching out to you for help, because I would certainly want to work with you to do my transactions. So, Rudy, thank you for taking the time today out of your busy schedule. I could hear you blowing up. I hope you didn't have a deal that like needed to close and they needed one last thing for you, because like you missed your funding cutoff. But thank you, man, for coming on today. And how do people find you?
On Instagram, usually that's where I'm hitting it really hard at Rudy Home Loans, and also on Facebook under Rudy Lopez, and YouTube as well under Rudy Lopez. But yeah, thank you, man, for having me. This is talking to you. I think I've told you in the past, and if I haven't, I'll say it again. Every time I get off the phone with you or I finish a meeting with you, I'm a better person as a result of that. So thank you for everything that you do, because we need more people like you as well. We got loan officers, but we got leaders like you that are just out there supporting people like me, and helping my dream become a reality too. So dude, I can't thank you enough.
Bro, that means the world to me. I'm gonna just this is the only clip we're gonna get out of this entire thing was what you just said, and I'm just gonna like promote it on Facebook to everybody for everybody to hear, in case you ever change your mind on that. But it means a lot to me, man. And likewise, um, I could be walking down the hall, and you and I can just jump in a room and have a good 30-minute conversation,
Yes.
and I'm like, man, that's
Yes.
it's same thing. I walk away just being like, it was such a long road to get here, and when we finally landed the ship, it was like, it's all worth it. And thank you for trusting me. But more importantly, thank you for just being who you are and continuing to fulfill how you're going to break through, man. So I'm excited for you. And thanks for being here today, man. Have a great day, Rudy.
Thanks, Chris. You too, buddy.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
Thanks, man.
Trying to get out of this thing. Okay, let me just end this.